The effect of death and mortuary workers. The mortuary sector includes funeral homes, cemeteries, and crematoria. In large neglected sectors regarding the study of occupational factors that can affect the quality of work life. The present study aims at over this gap by investigating jobs, demanding, and resources that affects burnout levels. Burnout is described as a response to chronic work-related stress, the symptoms of which defined as the experience of emotional exhaustion, also known as depersonalization. A diminished professional accomplishments where emotional exhaustion and or cynicism are considered the two core dimensions. Indeed, since we reduce personal accomplishments to refer to the feeling of decline in one competence of productivity and to one lower services or efficiency. Representing the self-evaluation components of burnout, emotional exhaustion refers to the feelings and development of fatigue being depleted of emotional resources. Cynicism describes where employees develop cold, indifferent attitudes towards their jobs, co-workers, and organizations. Many funeral directors see this role to serving as a greater purpose, some even irritating a modified proverb from as Peter Parker principle. With great responsibility comes great rewards. However, a funeral director occupation requires more than physical labor and a particular skill set, but it requires superpower to take on the emotional labor of listening to families who have experienced loss while also helping them to plan funeral services for their loved ones who have passed away. Workers such as those in the mortuary sector are constantly facing death and suffering. This particular aspect and imply both physical and psychological risk. On the hand, studies have primarily focused on the role of noxious biological and physical risk in multiplying and manipulating and exposure to pathogens of dead bodies while using our safety procedures and to prevent physical hazards. On the other hand, psychological and societal consequences should be related to the friends and deceased. Many affected of levels of stress lead to negative traumatic events, involve high emotional labor since we are required to show compassion, display emotions according to specific suffering and situations. The constant exposure to death has also significant implications, feeling stigmatized and socially isolated. Unlike other occupational categories, listen to me, unlike other occupational categories such as healthcare workers, social workers, firefighters, police officers who are exposed to death and suffering, the funeral and mortuary are very often confronted with the social invisibility that permeates these professions, reflecting the widespread social taboos that surround death and the manipulation of dead bodies. Despite this, workers in the mortuary sector constitute an essential professional category that must deal with day-to-day work-related risks and job demands that may affect health and well-being. Of the most common job characteristics, such as the workload, the demeaning, the degree of autonomy and control, this occupational group must confront work-related aspects such as counseling bereaved families, working with human remains, and work-related social stereotypes. As a mortuary worker, I routinely meet death as part of my professional role. As a result, my resilience is built through experience, education, and peer support. However, working in this profession, it is hard for me to discuss and reveal my emotions and my personal stress to others. The novel stressor associated with COVID-19 pandemic had a pronounced effect on many of us, and it is important to identify ways that we can help ourselves while helping each other. Many feel as if death does not affect mortuary workers, but I'm here to tell you today, because we don't show it, it sometimes affects us as it do others. The reality of it all is that some instances that it affects us more than others. One of the greatest tasks that I haven't truly accomplished is seeing a mother and a father bury their child. Most of the time when their children come in, when they come in to make arrangements for their children, I find myself thinking about my children and the what ifs concerning my children. Recently, my daughter graduated from high school this year and decided to attend the graduation party. When leaving the party, 2 of her friends was killed in an automobile accident. My firm was chosen to handle the service for one of them. This is the point where I'm feeling like falling apart while dealing with the emotional needs of my daughter and now having to deal with the needs of a family. I must remind myself and I must suppress my feelings, because now I must act as a father, but most of all and overall, I must find myself putting the needs of the bereaved first. Death is an ever-present cultural phenomenon, and burying the dead is primarily cultural, and the fact of acting as burying the dead is one of the oldest known cultures and ultimate foundation of society. For example, there is evidence of man exhibiting for the dead as back for as 50,000 years ago. Death as a social norm has perpetuated the role of funeral directors and the necessity of someone to lead the bereaved through the end of life. The relation role of funeral directors is multi-layered. Funeral directors often build positive relationships with grieving families. And funeral home is viewed as a safe place of grieving. As a result of new connections, innovative funeral home offer aftercare programs to help achieve a healthy grieving process, and partner with hospitals and churches accommodating the needs of our clients. Despite the current relationship dynamics, a relational emphasis was not present during the early days of our profession. In closing, I want to say that the essence of the funeral director role now include making sure the needs of the family are met and helping the bereaved find a meaning in their loss. As a result, directors must serve, console, educate, listen, advise, suggest, empathize before, during, and after death occurs. Often funeral directors are confronted with families that are overwhelmed, uneducated about death, unsure about the next step. Therefore, funeral directors should lead families in grieving and accomplish a healthy grieving at least in one way. How? By providing social support system for the bereaved, helping the bereaved understand death, and providing a final and that death is part of life, integrating and bereaved back into the community, easing the transition to new life after a loved one has passed away, providing for embracing and expressing pain, reaffirming one's relationship with one who have died, providing a time to say goodbye. The modern funeral director can serve families and friends of the bereaved by leading others through the grieving process. The role of the funeral director has evolved from one task of orientation to a relationship. As a result, our revised framework for approaching funeral services is necessary. And I want to say today in closing that as we, as funeral directors, move forward to our next level, don't be so demeaning to it does not affect you in a way where you can't empathize and sympathize with the family. But realize your first ability as a funeral director is to serve the family. As we serve families in the bereavement moment, we must understand that even though we are affected by death, We have to keep our position that we can lead them to a safe, healthy grieving process, knowing that our end results will be greater than where we started.